Good evening. He's been a household name for 60 years, a much-loved entertainer, artist and musician. Today, Rolf Harris has been found guilty of 12 counts of indecent assault.
Sort of makes you feel despair, doesn't it? Because in one way there's something inherently comedic about Rolf Harris, who was always seen in such a sort of a light-hearted context: silly shirts, silly instruments, silly frivolous drawings around children and adolescents, novelty songs. You know, everything about Rolf Harris was about lightness and sort of silliness. There was nothing about him that was serious. So that's why I suppose when they introduce the issue on the news, they have to go out of their way to say, you know, 7-year-old victim, friends of the family, to anchor it in the victim's reality. But what's difficult is there's nothing to, as a sort of a story, because it's a news story, but it's a story nonetheless. It's like there's nothing to get you can't get sort of any joy out of it, because look at Rolf now, he's just a pathetic old guy. I mean, like, you can't go, good, go to prison. I mean, what vindication, what joy can you get from it? What sense of justice? It just makes you feel the reality is very muddled and confusing. Like you have to revise your own childhood. That's an integral part of your own life. You have to look back and go, oh right, so what was going on then when I was watching Cartoon Club and enjoying that stuff and the Rolf Harris? But you have to revise your narrative. Like, so when you see him there with his family, so on one side of the story you've got these victims that are obviously human and real, and then the other side you've got Rolf and his family that are human and real. So it's not like there's, you know, so like Saddam Hussein, where it's like, we've got to get Saddam Hussein out of Iraq. You know, yeah, look at him with his moustache and his brutality and his military medals. This makes sense, I can understand it. With Rolf Harris newly cast as a villain, it just creates this uneasy moral climate of nihilism. It's like a graffiti over our consciousness, a graffiti over our grasp of what's real. So it creates this, it really contributes to this idea that we stand on unfirm ground. You know, that's what it does for me. It's like there's a horror, an uncanniness to it. And I tell you what's behind that is that our reality, the way we perceive reality, is an exclusion of information. Our senses filter out the majority of information and leave us with a manageable sort of forum, a manageable sort of crucible of sensory information from which we form our perspective, and then filtered into that are sort of certain narratives and ideas. But we know on some level that there's all kinds of other information that we're unable to understand, information that religions try to refer to, that science tries to uncover, and we sense that information is there and we sense it's beyond us. So when something happens, it's like there's a little tear in the fabric of the understandable narrative, and Rolf Harris is indeed a paedophile, and it suggests that thing out there is malevolent, that what lies beyond death, what lies in the unknowable, is something that's truly terrifying. It's also because this is entertainment, it has to sort of create sort of drama and create sense of it all, but really no sense can be made of it. That what we believed about Rolf Harris and what we've projected onto Rolf Harris was not what Rolf Harris was, and perhaps what our expectations of not only Rolf Harris but our own family, the people that we're in love with, similarly, they can't meet those expectations, that our version of reality is held within our head, that what we see out there in the world is not an objective thing but an entirely subjective thing, that it could all fall apart, as in W.B. Yeats's poem, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Adam Curtis talks about this sort of thing called oh dearism, where that's sort of when you watch like loads of famine on the news, or corruption, or you get another celebrity exposed as a paedophile or a sexual offender, in the end you realise that nothing really can be done. You're just left with this sort of despondent sense of hopelessness and injustice. So what can we draw from it? I suppose, right, here's what we can draw from it, if there's anything useful we can get from it. We have to have an integral and essential relationship with something higher than ourselves, because otherwise we're always looking on the outside for validation, something to believe in. So we have to find a sense of detachment from materialism. We have to act upon communal values that are prevalent everywhere, communal values of sort of trust and love, and not be enamoured of and hypnotised by far-off celebrity figures and think that they can provide any kind of absolution or indeed exemplify any kind of superiority. We have to recognise that our lateral relationships with one another are where we can find peace, as long as that's in conjunction with a kind of harmony, with an indistinct and difficult to ascertain frequency that from which all reality is emergent. That's that unknowable thing, that sense of horror that we get of the unknown, the sense of, oh my God, I can't really trust anybody, nothing can be trusted. That's about contextualisation. We are alive, we are going to die, but it isn't malevolent. That's the application of a narrative onto the unknown. It's not malevolent, it's just infinite. Within the infinite, there's no room for duality, there's no room for good or bad. These are just humanistic ideas to try and make sense of the unknown and the unknowable. So really, we have to find our own rituals, our own codes, our own behaviours, and make sure that, if nothing else, they are kind and benevolent, because those values, whilst having no sort of supreme and ultimate moral value, they do have an intrinsic value to ourselves in that they make you feel better when you behave like that. It's a very simple thing. Be nice to yourself, be nice to one another, try and find something to believe in that isn't detached and unknowable. Thank you very much. That is some Rolf Harris Trews.
Nose is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the nose. If the nose was true, I want some trews. Let's have some trews.